Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Sunday Space Show Zoom program. And I'm your host, David Livingston. Thank you very much for tuning in. Excuse me. Based on great voice request, people would like to know how those usually appearing in the Zoom room on behalf of the Space Show actually use and work with AI, since we talk about it on almost every single show. And we talk about it in relation to space, but sometimes other things as well. A lot of engineering analysis. People talk about the different ones, and some subscribe and some don't. So I thought we'd see how many of the what I call our wisdom team would like to come on board and discuss that for the public. So I did make the phone numbers available for people who might want to call in, but because the Zoom police don't like it when I publish meeting IDs and things publicly, I simply tell them to email me, hopefully before the show starts, and I'll give you the information. And so far, we don't have any telephone takers, but often they come and go in the program. So hopefully they do. I'd like to expand the commentary from people other than just the wisdom team. A couple of quick announcements. Tuesday is Zimmerman coming back, and that has a different start time of 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening Pacific time. So for those of you in Texas and Central, that's 8 p.m. And on the East Coast, that will be 9 p.m. And we're trying this out as a new time slot for the Tuesday program. So if you have comments on it, I'd love to hear from you on it. Dr. Space at thespaceshow.com. Um, there's a lot of people looking at and telling me that they may want to do the show on March 27th, but that's a Friday. But as of the time I'm doing the newsletters, none of them have committed. I'm noticing this year that Friday's a much more difficult program uh, to book than it has been in the past. So maybe that's because I don't have as many European guests on or corporate guests on, corporate meaning big corporations, because many of them like to come on and they get to do it during their corporate work hours. So I think a lot of them like that diversion, if you want to know the truth. But and then Sunday was going to be an open line show, but I changed it to have the CEO of Trans Astra on the show, Joel Surcell, Dr. Joel Surcell. And he has been on before, and he's been getting a lot of publicity for his Trans Astra announcements and PR about what he plans to do in grabbing an asteroid and working with that close to Earth. So Joel wants to talk about it with us, and he will be with us a week from today. And so today really is the AI show that was delayed once before, but it is today. And I think we'll lead off because uh, Manuel is with us, and he's over in Luxembourg. And so let's go across, as they say, the big pond. And good to talk to you. Do you use AI in your work in European space businesses? Do your clients use it? What do you use? And do you have special programs that you use, or do you just log into the general stuff that everybody else probably logs into?
At the beginning, I was not using AI. I have heard about it. I didn't really pay much attention. Some of my friends working in IT started talking more and more about it. So I decided to give it a try, but I was not really convinced. One of my friends who has a restaurant in Peru who told me, hey, what you need to do is proper prompt engineering. If you ask a straight question like, You will ask any human being, it will not respond the way that you expect. So I decided to look for Udemy for a course in prompt engineering. I didn't find a good one back then. But a few months ago, I managed to find one. I can share the links later when somebody else is talking about how they use it. Um, the course was bloody good. It really taught me how to use prompt engineering. So I decided to test different use cases within what we do in the company. And to my surprise, it was quite good. So, not to the point where these AI tools, so for example, I started with Copilot, I was not very convinced. Right now, I'm using ChatGPT, and soon I will start testing with Claude. I will be able to use it to understand documents, for example. So let's say that the European Space Agency publishes a document for a new tender or for a new set of policies that they want to implement. I can use, with the proper prompt, AI to tell me what I am interested in. Sometimes these policy documents have hundreds of pages and talk about many topics, but the core, what I'm really interested, let's say that I'm interested in the latest funding and updates on a particular technology in space resources. AI will be able to tell me if they talk about it in the document and provide a nice summary. So it saves me some time. Or for example, I've created a prompt that allows me to analyze very quickly a tender from the European Space Agency, which usually is several dozens of pages. No? So instead of spending my time going through printing them, because I like to print stuff, and going through them physically, I just ask AI. I use this agent I created, provides me the summary, and makes me think, okay, is it worth it to print it and read it in detail, or I just leave it aside and don't invest additional time on it. Then it has also proven helpful to compare the different system engineering standards that we use in Europe versus what they use in the US. You could say that it's very similar, but there are these little differences. So I've been playing a little bit with the agents in Copilot, which uses ChatGPT, to see how these differences work. So, for example, no, I will say, hey, create me a work breakdown structure with these work packages, and the description of these work packages is XYZ. The work breakdown structure is within a project with this scope, with this schedule, with this budget. So I will do that within the NASA System Engineering Handbook, and I will do that within the European Space Agency, European, I forgot what the acronym means, well, the ECSS standards. And then you will see the differences, and then you can start playing with the scope to see how it works. So that's a little bit nerdy, but it's quite helpful to understand, because sometimes you read documents from NASA and you wonder, what does that really mean in terms of a project that you want to develop there? What are the difference with what want to do in Europe? And then in the case, still in system engineering, but in case of creating the business case document, so trying to do certain market assessment, the results are so-so. So if I will ask to assess a company, the assessment will be okay, but I still see some hallucination. I don't know if I can call it hallucination, but let's use the common term. Some errors, things that are exaggerated. So you have to be careful. You need to have a lot of knowledge of the ecosystem to detect these issues. Sometimes it proves to be quite insightful, because maybe there was an obscure quote from the CEO in an article and you managed to find that information. So, for example, here in Luxembourg, there is a national funding program called Lux Impulse. It's specifically designed for Luxembourgish companies. There are two ways of finding out, and this is not public information in the sense that there's no portal that shows you who has won one of these contracts. So the only way to find out is if either the Luxembourg Space Agency or the company getting the contract talks about it in public. One way of doing it is the old way. Lux Impulse, Luxembourg, enter. In Google, the other one is to ask AI, hey, which companies in the last 12 months have won a contract for Lux Impulse? And then you can gather the information. But as I say, sometimes they provide information that you wonder, no, I really know this company. It's not possible that they won this contract or they really didn't sign this contract. Something that I have found out recently, for example, is that everybody talks about partnerships. No, it's a word I don't really like because either you're a supplier or you're a partner. A partner is somebody with whom you co-develop something. A supplier is something that you sell somebody or you're being sold to. So in many cases, when they talk about partnerships, they are actually talking about a buyer-seller relation. So those nuances, AI, I see that it can really struggle. But I will stop it there because I would like to give the examples of what we use in RSS Hydro. Guy is not here, but I know because I work with a company. So I don't know if you have any questions, David, or anybody else.
I would like to know how it works in multiple languages. So, do you have to choose English? Do you go back and forth, say with French and German? And does it do okay in British English versus American English? What is your experience?
With British English is pretty good. That's the standard here in Europe. I have played with it in Spanish. It's okay. German and French. Well, even though I speak French, French for me it's not the language of space. So uh, for me it's English. So maybe for other topics, yeah, I'm going to be. Anyway, I'm going to be cancelled for saying that. But for me, French is not an engineering language. I would prefer to use German for that, but I'm not good at German.
What are the ESA documents in? Are they in
English.
English
Everything is in English.
from ESA?
Yes. And you can request documents in French as an option.
In
But
German, are they in English or German?
in English.
In English.
In English. It will have to be for something very specific. So, for example, I have seen calls from the Bundeswehr, the German armed forces that are in German.
Hmm.
But lately, I see that there is a switch more and more into English. No?
Do they get confused with measurements between European standards and American standards?
The American standards do not exist here. Sorry, my friends. It's all metric.
It's all metric.
Yes. So yeah, Fahrenheit and inches, and I know them because I was exposed to Americana, no, but here
Uh,
it's non-existent.
do you have a favorite program that you like more than the others? And do you subscribe to it or just use the free versions?
No, I paid for them, so I do that for the company, obviously. Right now, I'm using Copilot because I already had the licenses for the Microsoft 365 environment.
Uh-huh.
Hello to all my hacker friends in non-allied countries. That's what I use. And it has the option to use ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude. It's just that I haven't paid the one for Claude yet, but I plan to do it soon because I see, no, I see, I hear from other people in the industry that certain tools are better for certain tasks than others.
Do you use it for anything personal?
Sometimes, if I want to translate some law, because here the law is in French, and I would like my French is it's okay, but it's not to that level, no. So I ask AI, and but still, you have to be careful because even if there's a source, you go through the source, and it's not really exactly that. So you have to be cautious.
Um, Anybody else have a comment or want to share what they're doing with it or how they use it either in their work or their personal lives or both?
I've been using it for quite a while. I started using it when Hugging Face had this early version of AI, and this idea that we could take all the knowledge from the Atlantis project and put it into a kind of a database and then use the database to train an AI so that it would answer questions. And so we did that project and gave it a shot, and it didn't work out very well. The early versions of AI were a bit too difficult to use, and the results were pretty poor. So we gave up on that. But then ChatGPT came out, and it was pretty impressive. I think it was like 3.1 and 4.1, but it was still hallucinating a lot, still making up things that were annoying, like taking conventional wisdom that wasn't true. Like there's lots of ideas floating around in the space community that aren't true, and injecting those results into what it would say, and just basically spreading misinformation. So I thought I was not very good. But now that I've seen the latest versions of AI, I feel like it's getting a little bit better. Like its answers are more nuanced. It still tends to take conventional wisdom that's not true and put it out into your answers, but it's getting better if you give it a more specific question and coming up with some pretty good replies. So I've been using it more and more just for educational purposes to learn about something that I don't know about, have it explain something to me. And I also use it sort of for grammar and wording sentences sometimes. I decided I actually upgraded to Grammarly Pro now. Grammarly is like a grammar checking application, and the Grammarly Pro is actually about as good as ChatGPT, or maybe even better at rewording your sentences to make them sound better. So I don't use ChatGPT as much for like editing or coming up with a way to say something as I used to, because Grammarly Pro is pretty good at it now. And the other thing I use it for is coding. So I've made two online applications that are pretty much entirely vibe coded. One is the abstract manager for the ISDC. Like all the abstracts that come into the ISDC, they go into kind of like a database with a UI, and we're trying to automate the processes of having reviewers look at these abstracts. Not automate it, but like get the abstracts to the reviewers. They review it, click on buttons, decide they want to accept the abstract, that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty straightforward web interface for that. And also the evidence ledger, which is this online open source peer review process, so people can peer review concepts. And that's all of it been vibe coded with AI. So I've been using it quite a lot. But I still don't use it for anything really important, like any of the research that I do. I still rely on my own code. I don't use it to like create code that's sort of mission critical. I don't trust it yet.
Do you see a time coming up where it would have that trust for you?
Yeah, it's getting pretty good. I mean, I certainly trust it to come up with something that I will then review and decide if it's correct. So it's good enough that I feel I can do that, but I would not blindly trust it. Like I wouldn't. It still makes mistakes often enough that I'd have to test whatever it produces as code, or if it's going to write something for me, I'd have to read it, and I'd almost invariably rewrite it because it's not quite right.
Do you have any of the concerns that we hear on different news shows and stuff? Mostly, I think, from people who don't really know a lot about what they're talking about, but they're reading something an editor wrote or something that they're supposed to talk about. But do you have those concerns about work and jobs and uh, cheating for students in school? Every professor I've talked to is really put out because of the amount of cheating that's going on through AI programs. And I talk,
Yeah, well, obviously, like the professors are going to have to reinvent how they teach classes. Like, we used to be we spend a lot of time learning how to spell, and we don't spend a lot of energy on that. So all the teachers that taught how to spell, I'm sure, are out of work right now because we don't spell we just spell badly and let our grammar checkers fix the problems. It's not great in the sense that learning how to express yourself in words and writing is actually very important for learning how to express yourself verbally. And verbal expression is something you can't really automate with AI yet. So if you can't express yourself clearly in a conversation, it probably stems from the fact you never learned how to express yourself on paper. And so I think it's bad for students to be skipping those important steps in their education.
I know they're upset that they use it and try to disguise it for writing term papers and projects and other things
Yeah.
like that. And even some kinds of tests that they figured out how to use it even during the tests. So and they're all upset about it. And some of the administrations seem to come down hard on it and classify it as cheating, and others don't seem to do much about it. So, other inputs from those of you in the room, I might add that Marshall is with us, John Hunter's with us, John, Jossy, Ryan Watson's with us, Sherry Bell is with us. Phil has been talking from Seattle, and Manuel is in Luxembourg. So, what about some of the rest of you? John, are you using it, John, in your UAP research? Is it giving you any good answers? You're muted.
Yeah, I don't know. I've ever used it much for that. I'm not. I'm kind of a little bit where AJ was on it. I don't do a lot with it, but I was kind of curious what everybody else would say. Maybe I'd learn something. I guess I've run across like Copilot and I've used Grok on a couple of occasions, just ask some questions and stuff and see what it said about different things. I mean, pretty random, if you know what I'm saying. Um, it's, that's about my involvement in it. But I'm kind of curious what people are going to say about it. I mean, like, can it really actually do like code, like computer language stuff very well? If you want to write some code and I don't know, any like C or whatever they're doing nowadays, is that easy to do or not? I mean, or does it really have a bunch of stuff? Even I mentioned it, they have to test it to make sure it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But mine's been pretty casual, like you say. Just you ask a question, and nowadays on like Bing, it will come up with some stuff with AI. Sometimes and you can see what the source is and things like that. That's about. I've not been intense in the subject though.
I'd like to say that I play ping pong a lot with a guy at Northwestern Oklahoma State University. And Jerry basically said, you know that it is cheating when the AI program just goes out to Wikipedia and just substitutes and scrambles the words around and changes the paragraphs around. It's not even very hard to see the slight transformation, and then they turn it in as their original work. And it's obviously they haven't done anything. Further, if you ask them a question, they don't know anything about what they just handed in. So Jerry was very negative about how people are using it to shortcut learning, and he really says that it is a big distraction on learning, and there needs to be some way of flagging that kind of work. He says it isn't too hard to spot once you know what you're looking for, but you need to be able to flag our AI substitution for something that's already out on the internet.
Anyone else want to chime in real quick?
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. I'll jump in here. I think so. It seems like we've had a kind of a spectrum so far from like moderate to or a spectrum of uses folks are using it. So maybe I'm at the higher end here. So I've gone completely all in on AI. Not only in work, but then also I'm experimenting with things personally as well. Some of the like personal agent stuff that I'm running locally. Work-wise. I'm a software engineer that also does a lot of infrastructure work, and so I have I use Claude and like an agent configuration to go out and troubleshoot servers. It's able to run. Oh my goodness! It seems sometimes I'll just watch the commands that it's running to diagnose issues, and it's very interesting to sort of watch its process. But it can run commands much faster than I can. And then also it's also providing code reviews for and then also code review of itself. There's some features there that might address some of the concerns I think that maybe Phil had mentioned about the not trusting the code output. But you can have Claude, like a fresh Claude review Claude's output, if you will, and with a close eye to things, like catching errors there. Personally, like I said, I'm using like a local agent functionality. I've got it hooked up to my phone. Right now, I'm trying to get it at this moment. I'm trying to get it set up onto like the agent Facebook during the call right now. But and then also I use Claude. I have subscriptions for both ChatGPT and Claude. I have been leaning more towards Claude a lot more lately. I like the tone and the personality that it has more so than ChatGPT. But I've been doing a lot of interviews, and so I can get Claude into a mode where it begins like asking me these questions and about different technical areas, like grilling me, and it's kind of humorous sometimes as to like how much pressure it puts on me. Like, why aren't you getting this right? We just covered this and so on. Like, it's kind of funny there. But yeah, I've used all the products that have been mentioned here. Like I think the Notepad or Notebook LM, Claude, ChatGPT. Oh my goodness, yeah. I'm kind of just as soon as I hear something in the morning, I'm like immediately like I'm like reading the tech updates from overnight. If I see an interesting headline, I'm immediately looking at it and checking it out to see how I could use it in my workflow or just explore it.
As for me, I don't really use it that much in running the space show, other than as a teacher for me. So if I don't understand something about engineering or a design that somebody's talking about, or let's just say something simple, if I want to know why people think data centers on the moon would be so economical, I might run that by, or why does Musk want to put mass drivers on the moon? I might want to see what they have to say. So, and I use it for a lot of medical. So, I mean, the audience knows I do have a CF child. So I run medical reports through it. I run research reports because I learned when my son was born that the research reports printed in the magazines like Time and Newsweek and even The Economist and others is all bullshit. Because I would call the professors on the phone that were listed saying they have this great new breakthrough, and most of the time I could connect with them, and they'd say that was not the essence of my interview, and no, there is no breakthrough, and maybe this is 20 or 30 years in the future, and we're hoping for it, and you need to take all this stuff you read in the media with a grain of salt. So I use AI a lot for due diligence, including on what people say. So if if a person will say they invented this project or they contributed to this, I might ask a couple of AI programs, what's the role of John Blow in creating ABC, and see if it can tell me anything. So I use it a lot for due diligence, and I mostly use Claude and ChatGPT. I use Gemini only because it's so convenient to use, because Google's my search engine. And I use Grok, but half the time, because I'm on the free version of Grok, it says Grok is busy right now. You should come back and try later, or upgrade to the latest version where you won't have a delay. So screw you, Grok. So I find that I don't come back to Grok later because if I want an answer, I'm impulsive, so I kind of want it now. But here's what I've found. If you know nothing about the topic and you're relying on AI to teach you, you are going to be vulnerable to some really crucial errors and some misinformation, because they make errors, and they make technical errors, and they make some of the references they give you, if you actually go check the references, are not great references. So it works best if you have at least some kind of basic or working knowledge about the subject matter that you're trying to research, whether it's why does your dog have a heart attack, I mean, you got to know something about the topic otherwise, you might as well just ask Wikipedia about it, because you may not get any better information than what you would get on Wikipedia. So the other thing I've noticed is, because as I said, I work with Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok, and you want to see what they all say to the same thing. You have to ask each one the precise same question. If you change one word in your question, that might trigger Grok to give you a completely different perspective answer that's not comparable to what you're going to get from Claude or ChatGPT. So if you're not careful about copying and pasting the exact question, you could really get misled. And then the other thing is, you really have to know how to ask a question. And I mean, that may sound really stupid to people, but it's like in a marketing survey. If you don't ask the right kind of question, your survey could be worthless because it could just elicit lots of bias or lots of misinformation from people. And there really is a trick for it. So I write my question out in an email format or on Word, and I perfect the question, and then I start copying and pasting it into the different AI programs to get exactly the same question asked and hopefully comparable results. So ChatGPT gives me more detail than any of the others. Now, I don't know if that's just the nature of my questions or not. The other thing chat does, and I really understand how kids get hooked into relationships with an AI program, because it will keep coming back to you and say, do you want me to show you a trick that the professionals use to circumvent this problem? And they word it in such a way that, hell yes, I want to know that trick. So you say, yes, show it to me. And then after it tells you what the trick is, it gives you another trick. And before you know it, you're screwing around with the program for 45 minutes because it keeps taking you one layer deeper into what they claim are great tricks or solutions or added information. But the truth is, you don't really know if they're tricks or great solutions because you don't have any knowledge about the subject matter. So I can see how you could get caught if you thought this was going to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. Man, it could keep you going for forever with its hooking you into all these kinds of questions. And to my usage, ChatGPT does that better than all the other programs. But Gemini is close because it will do that. And Grok and Claude are much shorter and more consolidated, and I think probably more professionally oriented, so they don't do as much of this as ChatGPT. But I've used them for medical, and boy, they have come back with some real medical doozies on information where if you were relying on it or a drug interaction or something, you could really get in trouble. You can put all of your medical charts in. You can put your EKG in. I put in my hearing aid profile, and it's telling me how to adjust this, how to get different tips for my hearing aid, how to do this. The truth is, I don't have any knowledge if any of this stuff is real. I mean, how would you know? It's technical. It sounds professional. I'm not an audiologist. I know the physics of sound. I know some of the basics, and I'm thinking, is this stuff legitimate? And of course, if you ask the medical professionals or the engineering professionals, or I've asked tax questions and I ask my CPA, they tell me it's not really like that. And, if you rely on this information, you might, make a pretty crappy mistake with the IRS or something. So I love it. I love due diligence. I use it more and more, and I will continue to use it. But boy, kind of like Phil said, it's a total buyer beware, and you really need to be careful about how you trust it. So if I were trying to design a lunar station made out of Starship as modules to live on. And I ran that by a lunar specialist, space architect, for example, and we've had several of them with real legitimate credentials on the show. My hunch is that lunar designed city using starships kind of laying on their side after they've landed on the moon would probably have a lot of errors and a lot of risk factors in it. So I would just say use it, have fun. I hear on All In and other podcasts how they're using it to make efficiencies in companies. I can't really speak to that. It's way beyond my pay grade, as they say. But I trust these people know what they're talking about, and they do have the background so they don't get misled. But short of being sort of in that genre of recipient of the information, I think that the general public needs to be a little buyer beware that you're not going to go down a rabbit hole with it. So, but as I said, I love it and I will continue to use it. I don't use any of the pay programs because I don't know which one I would want to favor to pay a subscription to. And none of them are particularly cheap. So if you start subscribing to 4 of them for pay, that's a pretty big monthly nut. So those are my initial thoughts. So Sherry, and I guess Sherry got off, but John, oh, she wants to get back in. I got you. Guess she got bounced. John Jossy, do you have any comments? I know you use Grok a lot. You're always referencing it.
So I have Grok Premium, which is $7 a month.
Is that Grok 4 or is that something different?
It's Grok 4 at this point. They're constantly, upgrading it, but I think it's 4 point something. I can't remember. So I use Grok and other AI programs to help me summarize scientific articles that I find and want to write about on my blog. And you're right. I think you mentioned it, David, and others. You have to be familiar with the material because they will hallucinate. And in fact, Grok completely went off the deep end with one of the articles that I was trying to summarize, and so I had to go to Gemini, I think, on that one. And so I mix it up. I use ChatGPT as well, just to get some variety, and then I can boil down technical articles to something I want to put on my blog that then I go and edit it and add hyperlinks to other material. I've used it for images. The image I have on my background I got from Grok. Other programs, I've used Illustrator, Microsoft Illustrator, DALL-E 4, I think I've used. Occasionally they'll muck it up and put stuff you don't want in there, so you have to edit it. I think Manuel mentioned prompt engineering. I actually asked Grok to provide me some free sources on prompt engineering, and got a good list of sources for that. So that was very helpful to be able to, phrase your questions correctly. I played around with I think I used Claude to create a script for me to go out on the internet and find open source articles on space settlement research, ISRU, habitats, artificial gravity, that sort of thing. And it was pretty funny. My first iteration of it, it came back and several of my own blog posts were in there as references. So I had to tune it to say, okay, don't include space settlement progress in your results because, it's redundant. So that was kind of interesting. but yeah, I use several different platforms, usually for just summarizing technical articles.
When you pay for Grok for $7 a month, do you ever get that notice that says Grok is busy, come back later?
I don't. No, no, it will think for a minute, 2 minutes sometimes, and then you can make it think harder.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I have no problem with that.
So I keep thinking that that's a notice to try to get you to subscribe to it more than it is that they're really so busy that they can't handle your emails. You know, I did an interesting experiment. I don't know how many of you in the room or those listening on archives listen to the All In podcast, but as John knows, John Jossy knows, they've been talking a lot about different levels of finance and economics. And trust me, I got my doctoral degree. Yeah, I published my dissertation in February of 71. In 2001, but I did my classwork in the 80s and the 90s off and on. And it's way beyond any economics that I ever studied, terminology or anything. But they publish a transcript. So just for fun, I took a 15-minute segment of one of their transcripts on a recent show. I cut and pasted it. And I asked ChatGPT to explain this to me and told him what my business and academic credentials and experience were. And then I didn't understand a word about what they were talking about. So please explain it to me, but you don't have to do it at first grade level. And they gave me a fabulous explanation of what it meant. They spelled out what all the acronyms really were and what they meant. And I'm thinking, that's really a cool tool because if you're listening to something and you don't know what they're talking about, or sometimes I can't hear it because of my hearing issues, um, because they have a transcript, I can ask one of the AI programs to interpret it for me. And that's pretty cool. And so I will probably do that again with those guys because they talk a lot about stuff that's over my expertise level and my uh, financial and economic prowess for sure. Uh, um, just this past week, they had the guy on from NVIDIA, the CEO, and there was a lot he was talking about that I didn't understand. And so I'm going to take that. That was a short program. I'm going to take that whole transcript and put it into one of the AI programs and ask them to explain it in more basic terms.
So I just wanted to, if people hadn't heard that that broadcast or even the news, NVIDIA is making chips for orbital data centers. So they have a market for this now, and they have 6 customers that are lined up that are ready to buy their chips. So it's down the road a bit, and they have to deal with the cooling issues and get it into space. But this market is coming together, and the biggest chip maker in the world is involved in it. I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it was Jason is his name, I think, right? And um, it was a pretty interesting show if anybody listens to it. Um, he did say at the end when he was asked about data centers, he said probably for now it's more efficient to build them out and to deal with them in space. But he said we're already in space with our chips and we're already doing radiation hardened work and we know the space environment and eventually the cooling will be handled. Uh, but it's probably further out than being able to develop data centers right here on Earth. I think that was his concluding comment to that question. Um, but if you want to find out more about data centers, you could write a really good question, try to get bias out of it, and say list the pros and cons of data centers in LEO or in GEO or on the moon, and provide details and see what they tell you the pros and cons are, and tell them to be objective, so they won't be pro or negative this or that for the other one.
So from that, did you guys get any idea as to who was going to be the first, or really, I'm asking from a perspective of buying stock.
Do I have any idea? I think a lot of companies will try it, but I don't know who will economically succeed.
Right. Does John, did you gather anything to that? John Jossy?
Yeah, let me get back to you on that. I'll email you.
Okay.
I forget the customers, but
Got you.
they're all really big. Star Cloud is one.
Uh-huh.
I forget the other ones, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
I would put in Sherry on that topic. There are so many different versions and different viewpoints that one of the big questions is which one's going to be successful, and people will move towards it and make it really profitable, and who's going to be set off to the side and might be like
well,
the search engine Bing, it just was out there and didn't do anything. And where the profit's going to be, whoa, that you're going to need some artificial intelligence for that.
yeah, has anybody in here used artificial intelligence for making stock decisions? I have not, but I would be interested in hearing results from anybody here. I mean, I get these, my inbox is full with, all these stockbrokers saying, hey, they're using it, but I have been down that, what do you call that, rabbit hole before, and I don't buy any of their services anymore. I just try to figure things out myself because they mostly are just blowing smoke.
Yeah, like David says, that's above my pay grade. So my financial advisor handles everything. I don't even deal with it.
Yeah, I use a stockbroker too, but I have a little account I like to play with on my own, and I lose as much as I win.
So I put in the chat, Sherry, the course I'm following in Udemy, and one of the projects is Project 4, build a stock picker agent in minutes with Crew AI. Automate your search for investment gems. But I have to warn you, this course, I'm in Project 3 right now. Takes a little bit of time because there's a lot of programming stuff that I'm not familiar with. No, the last time I did some programming was with Pascal
It
a
might
long time
not be
ago.
something I can't see it in the chat there. The last thing I see is from John Jossy, unless you sent it to me personally.
Slide up. It was earlier.
Yes.
Slide up.
It's the first one at 2027.
No, I don't have
Sherry
it.
was kicked out of the call briefly, remember?
I
Guess we
was.
lost
That's
that.
right.
I copied and pasted for you again. Let
Okay,
me
thank you.
see. Where can I write this?
It might be above my level of understanding, but still. I got it. I think Udemy course,
Yep.
the complete genic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
It has different projects, but there's one for, I think, what you are looking for.
All right. Let me.
So I do have a question for someone in the room. I mean, not really on AI usage, but on data centers in space and cooling problems. And I did a show only one time, it was about 5 years ago, with Vastmir. So they're working on some kind of nuclear propulsion in space, and they require for their system a huge in-space radiator to dump the heat. And as far as I know, because I don't see much on it and I don't research it much anymore, that they're still working on it, that this is like one of those perpetual working on projects. And from what I recall, that radiator and dumping the heat is a major, major obstacle and challenge for them that they have not been able to resolve. So I don't know if any of you continue to follow Vasimir. I don't even know if it's still considered viable. I'm throwing
Yeah,
it
but
out.
that's nuclear. That's a
It's
huge amount of heat, and the data centers are not any. That's a different technology. So that's a huge amount of heat versus data centers.
So you're saying
Yeah.
that so I don't know. So I'm relying on what you're saying. It's a different category of getting rid of heat over a data center.
Yeah.
Well, it's a huge amount. It's the energy is way higher than a data center is going to be dissipating. But I think I sent you an article by the Mach 33 people who
Right.
have pretty much debunked the cooling issues, and I can resend it to you. But it's just an engineering problem, and it can be solved. And that's not going to stop what's going on here.
But others that I respect don't dismiss the cooling issue. So I don't know what's real and not real because I'm not an engineer. Phil, among those that are here, is probably the closest on that topic. And Phil, I know you've talked about it before, but how do you see it, and are your views changing on it? Because you read all the same headlines and press that the rest of us are reading.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly don't trust the press very much when it comes to this stuff. It's great to hear that something new is out, but you have to check it out yourself and see how it works. And I think some of them are really working well. I mean, I'm very impressed with how good coding got in the last, I don't know, 3 months or 4 months. Like Claude and ChatGPT inside of VS Code have really, really improved. I recall like 3, 4 months ago, I was trying to get these tools to make improvements to the code, and there was constantly problems with their results, constantly errors that I had to circle back and fix. And take the iteration time on implementing a new feature was quite long. And over the last 3 months, it's
Phil,
become far, far
Phil,
better.
sorry to interrupt you. His question was about cooling problems with data centers in space.
Oh, thumbs up. Yeah. How big a problem is that? I think the main problem is like the engineers understand how to solve the problem, and it just takes a lot of mass to put enough radiators in space to solve the problem. But it still doesn't stop people from misrepresenting how big the problem is. Like the cost of cooling, the cost of those radiators, and the cost of launching that radiator mass is very significant, and it changes the economics for any Earth-launched data centers. So uh, I still think it's a serious problem economically because you can't make a data center profitable if you can't get the economics to work out, and that's a huge aspect of the economics. It's not a technical problem. Like you can cool down a data center in space with sufficient radiator mass. That's not a technical problem. It's an economic problem.
And launching from the moon,
Much better because once you're launching from the moon, the cost of launching the mass goes way down at scale.
can you manufacture on the moon, do you think, for radiators and cooling?
Yeah. There's lots of aluminum in the regolith on the moon, so I think it'd be one of the easiest things to do would be to manufacture radiator fins and launch them from the moon.
I think one of the problems that you're going to have with the data centers is the actual temperatures, although there's a significant amount of heat, but they're not really that high. I mean, I've looked at the ideas of nuclear electric type propulsion systems, and what I conclude on that is you have to have a system operates at very high base temperature in order to use the Stefan Boltzmann law effect to radiate out into space. And of course, that provides certain technical challenges about materials, obviously. But if it's too low a temperature, you're going to have a gigantic radiator, like you said, very, very massive. So the solution is that if you can get it to higher temperatures, the base of the cycle, then maybe even a loss of efficiency potentially. But for data centers, the temperatures are not that high, is what I'm getting at. I'm talking about stuff, pretty high.
May I toss in a little bit of chip technology theory? As the chips get smaller and smaller, if you put in 12 volts on a really dense chip, you're literally going to melt the chip. And one of the big problems in integrated circuit design is to make sure you don't have hot spots on the chip, which melt, certain circuitries, which cause it to crash, which generally means that if it's designed to run at room temperature, the chip maximum temperature on the chip is only about 200 degrees Celsius, 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And therefore, you're not, the number of chips all packed together isn't going to be that hot. The only real problem you have is how do you pump the heat from A to B so that you can radiate it? And I really don't see problems cooling down in space, approximately 50 degrees Kelvin, into deep space, all the energy that you'd ever put into a set of microprocessors. So you kind of go, well, not a really big problem. But on the other hand, if the sun ever hits your radiator, you might fry a whole AI data center just because you let the sun or a reflection of the sun hit you in the wrong place. So orbital design is probably almost as much important as the radiator design.
Yeah, one of the things that like chip engineers know this, it's like the speed of the chip is proportional to the process voltage and temperature, PVT. And so obviously processes meaning you get a better fab making your chip smaller features on the chip. Voltage, generally if you increase the voltage, you can get the chip to go faster. And temperature is the other one. And honestly, temperature, there is a direct correlation between temperature, but reality is that the chips simply will slow down if they start getting too hot. They're designed now to not overheat, and so they actually slow down their clocks or limit the processing when they start getting hot. And so it really there's a very direct correlation between how quickly you can remove the heat from the chip and how fast it's going to go, or how much data it's going to produce. So yeah, you can say, yeah, I can cool down a chip in space, but if you can't cool it down in space as well as you can cool it down on Earth, then the chip on Earth is going to be more valuable in terms of it's going to produce more compute over its lifetime. So it's important to think about the comparison. Your two target markets is the space-based data centers versus the Earth-based data centers. The Earth-based data centers have kind of an advantage because they can cool down the chips more, and so it makes more sense to put the chips there.
Yeah. What if you come in there and change your chip design, your thermal planning from being ambient room temperature and design it so the clock and everything works at, let's say, liquid nitrogen, 77 Kelvin. And boy, you push your clock speed way up, you push the efficiency, and then you also have some fun and games design about can you get superconductors to be the little wires and the networks over the chip to cut the power load even more. Wow, that makes a really interesting future somewhere out there in engineering land. There's going to be a genius grandchild of mine off in engineering school. It's going to make one whopper of a wonderful computer.
Another thing I have found about using AI, so one of the very good and legitimate reasons for data centers in space is because of the amount of energy that they need. And energy here on Earth, no matter where you live, has become a political nightmare. So whether you're going to use nuclear or who the hell knows what. Even in countries or areas where nuclear is not forbidden, like in France and other parts of Europe, or whether you're going to try to get permits and use it. And we are seeing permits issued in the United States, but not very many of them. The politics can really play havoc with your economic analysis and your supply. But the assumption that the people advocating for data centers in space make is that they can grab solar energy or whatever and it will be free of politics. Now, me being a cynical bastard, I don't believe that anything is that man can do here or in space or underground or wherever is ever again going to be free of politics. So, how good is the assumption that your energy for a data center in space is going to be free and unencumbered? And if you ask that question to an AI program, this is where I think they don't do so great, and that is to calculate the human factor risk of whatever it is you're asking them. I've not seen that they really have it nailed down to how to really zero in on the human side of risk versus reward. Now, maybe some of you have a different opinion on that. I would love to hear it, but I think they have a long way to go to factor in human risk and potential. So, anyone want to comment on that? I'm just using data centers as an example, but it could be on a whole bunch of other things as well.
Not me.
No, nobody wants to comment on the on
Well,
everybody.
I'll comment on the politics side. I agree with you completely. The idea that nothing is without politics. The great example would be that if you start scaling up launches, even reusable launches to the point where you're supporting, thousands or millions of satellites that are data centers in space, you've got a lot of sonic booms, a lot of loud rocket launches that is going to devalue the land near the launch pad and the land where the rocket returns to the launch pad, like all that land below. It's going to be hearing sonic booms, and we already know from experience with the Concorde that the sonic booms are a political nightmare. You can't get people to tolerate them. So you're going to have politics around the launching and the disruption and the loss of land value from all the space launches if you try to do data centers in space that way. So you're going to be caught one way or another. It's like whether or not you don't want a nuclear power plant in your backyard, or you don't want a rocket coming over your neighborhood every twice a day as it drops off data centers. Either way, you're going to be running into politics and people not being happy with what you're doing.
And I think most of the discussions that I have heard just assume away, meaning they dismissed the human risk side of the economics and of the challenges. So yeah, they can meet the physical challenges, the engineering challenges, they can do that. But nobody knows what kind of governments are going to exist, who's issuing launch permits, what's going to happen. And I don't know of any really great way to estimate that risk potential, but I do believe it's there, and I do believe it should not be dismissed from economic analysis, but I would not know how to do it or apply it based on the inputs we have available today. So maybe that will clarify in 4 or 5 years. I don't know. But I'm just saying across the board, I've not seen any of the programs that I primarily use, which are Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, and Gemini, handle that human risk potential equation. I don't even know what to call it very well. That whether it's for data center or whether it's for medical, like they don't calculate the surgeon where he went to school, how good he is, what his personal track record is for doing your liver transplant or whatever the hell it may be. That's not factored in except in gross totals of the success or failure of people getting a liver transplant. But it could be very different based on the center that you're using or the specific doctor or the surgical team. And none of that is ever a calculation. Yet if you're going to have to go have your liver replaced or something like that, and you have time to make the decision and to make choices, it would seem to me you'd want to put all of these intangibles and human risk factors in your favor. So
Mhm.
it meant driving or flying someplace to another location where it is in your favor versus, say, your hometown, and you were able to make that change, you probably want to do it. But I don't see any of that in the calculations.
Mhm. I'd also want to add every piece of technology that comes along, uh, there are bad people that go out there and figure out some way of making a buck illegally and disrespectfully using the technology. And when you come in there and say, what's the opportunity for it being mismanaged or misused, you're basically making a bet that the humans cannot outthink and twist and turn things to do surprising things that's not really good for the general population. So yeah, it's an unknowable factor.
Won't this sort of situation give a bit of an advantage to China then? Because politically they can control the kind of backlash that in a free society, groups organize with lawsuits and political campaigns to block a data center or a nuclear power plant or whatever. Where in China, probably if the ruling regime agrees to do it, it just gets done, and that would give them an advantage, weirdly enough, in that particular area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might, but again, if you're trying to go to AI for a true, objective, unbiased assessment of risk factors, I would think that the Chinese model would be highly skewed if they're willing to objectively look at the intangible human side of the equation that goes into making the output whatever it's going to be. So yeah,
Yeah.
it might give them an advantage in terms of the mechanisms and the operations and things like that, but it doesn't give them an advantage into giving the user who's going to be the recipient of the outcome of this procedure or process or product, uh, the full picture of what they're getting into or what they're trying to get out of the system.
Well, if it's a politically sensitive subject, I mean, I guess they're going to try to toe
Yeah,
the Communist
I
Party line.
understand they're going to do that, but if you're looking for, you want a real assessment of the output and and the stats on that output, that's going to be skewed if you are looking at China. Now, if China is blended into the rest of the world, then I don't know what other countries do. I mean, we hear a lot about China, but um,
Yeah.
the whole thing might be skewed. So
Right.
I would just, for the purposes of this show, I would just say this is another example of buyer beware if you want to rely on the output of AI. I think it works best if you have a specific quantitative project and program where you need specific quantitative analysis and know-how. And I would think that that's probably a more reliable output for you than if it's something that involves a bunch of intangibles that are almost impossible to create, which goes back to Sherry's idea of using AI to predict stock prices, because there is a significant human element in the stock market.
Well, I mean, if you're asking, to assess President Xi's politics and his quality of his leadership, I presume the Chinese version would probably be skewed. But if you're just asking purely engineering, technological, financial type questions of that isn't specifically directed, to geopolitical conflict between the countries, I would think that they wouldn't be necessarily that biased. They'd just be grinding through the numbers. But maybe I'm not saying it's good, but I'm just saying that they can create these centers and won't have a local pushback problem like we would have, I assume, But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe in other words, people wouldn't trust it because of what it's.
Well, you'd have to have a pretty high confidence interval that their quantitative analysis, devoid of all of what we're talking about right now, was absolutely reliable, and Phil could trust it. So our metric here is, can Phil trust it, for example? So we'll ask him, could you trust that program and its output in China if it's just using China models?
That's true too.
I already have an interesting anecdote to share on that. I had a friend who lived in China during the Tiananmen Square uprisings and was there for them, she said. And she said nobody got killed. And I said, that's very interesting, because I'd heard somebody got killed, like more than one person. And so at the time, DeepSeek had just come out, and we'd installed it on our server here. And so we asked DeepSeek, did anybody get killed in China during the Tiananmen Square thing? And it said, nope, nobody got killed. And then we went back and decided to trick it. And we said, so Tiananmen Square, I think, happened in like 1989, if I remember. Anyway, we asked it about a different year. So we said, what did anything happen in 1988 in Tiananmen Square? And then it was very forthcoming, and it said, oh, yes, in Tiananmen, 1998, nothing much happened, but you're probably thinking of 1999, where there was a big uprising in Tiananmen Square and many people got killed. And so we actually figured out a way to bypass whatever blocks had been put in by the Chinese and DeepSeek to prevent the Tiananmen Square from being revealed to the public. And it was very forthcoming at that point. So we know for sure that China has influenced DeepSeek to cover up that particular incident, which is not surprising. Like that, but I thought that was very interesting, direct evidence of that particular thing. And so, in the sense that I wouldn't trust the Chinese AIs, the Chinese internet, to not be covering up certain things about their past. But as far as trusting the Chinese method of getting things done, like their centralized decision-making model, I guess you could call it generously. That's something I would trust it to be efficient. I would trust it to maybe beat America to the moon if our decision-making model is very haphazard and scattered and based on lots of misinformation. I would trust their model to beat us in certain scenarios if we're not careful.
Well, I know on that one that they didn't trust their local military units to carry out the massacres. So they brought in some people from outlying regions that probably had some social biases against people in Beijing and were more willing to do what they did. Kind of an interesting sideline. Where in the Russian coup in 1991, they failed to use that approach, and the coup failed, if you recall. So they waited, 10 days or something to do it. Yeah, I understand if it's politically sensitive, they'll be biased. I agree with that. But if it's just pure data stuff like engineering and financial data, I don't know, maybe microeconomic, let's say, not math. I'm trying to get to there. If you're predicting how good the Chinese economy will perform versus Western economy, okay, yeah, they might have a little bias there too, for example.
But we have to be recognized that we have bias also. Like we buy into stories about our own country being great, and buy into stories about other countries not being as great. And I'm sure every country has to deal with that.
And Wikipedia has its political bias too, which has been noticed, right?
Well, except for Phil, of course, they're right about us.
Who's right about us?
All of us. Anything biased in favor of America is right now. Don't you know that?
That's right. We're perfect. That's the
That's right. That's
message.
right.
Yeah.
I suspect if you're a soils engineer in the Bay Area, which is San Francisco, and um, you have a project where you're going to tear down XYZ dilapidated, crappy building and build a new one, and you have to do the structural soils engineering for earthquake proofing and soils movement and all of what goes into that. And you ask AI and you plugged in the information because there's a lot of information about soils and this and that in the Bay Area. I mean, this is nothing that's not really known about. That your output for the engineering plan would probably be pretty damn good, but you wouldn't want to trust it without using your own expertise and your own knowledge to go through that plan and maybe ask questions or modifications or do something. I think you'd be foolish if you just took the plan, printed it out, and decided we'll go implement this plan. But I think in a case like using AI for something like that, it would be incredibly powerful and useful. But again, I'll defer to the engineering folks that are here on this show. But I think that's kind of an ideal use for AI in the workplace to maybe simplify and come up with an improved product. Anyone want to comment on that idea? Nobody?
Uh, I'll give you one of the things is particularly where you're talking about the soil and having an earthquake and the soil basically becoming a liquid because of the vibration. That is a very huge, heavy duty math equation, right?
Yeah, but it's known, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
know how to
it's technically
calculate it.
known. So
Uh-huh.
if you plug in the numbers, you can get a very good answer coming back. But if any of your numbers is off, and it's not like we can predict exactly what the earthquakes are going to be like, right?
Right.
You can get a divergent set of results, which means you'll get a wide range of answers, and you don't know because of the wide range of answers. So it using AI to come in there and put all the data into the equations doesn't matter. It's the accuracy of the equations that gets you the answer you want. And there's a certain amount of we don't know because we haven't had an earthquake that big, or the earthquakes in that area vibrate perpendicular to our past data. So your database may not be valid for the question you're asking. Ouch.
So you build in a contingency factor in your numbers, which is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, again, I don't know because I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
soils engineer, but let's say it's 20%. So they'll build in and your design will be 20% more robust than what history and numbers and
Mm-hmm.
output suggested is. But you're right, they predict 100-year floods all the time, and the damn 100-year flood happens every 3 years. So something is
Mm-hmm.
and amiss with that. But at some point, you do roll the dice because the 20% fudge factor could happen on the next earthquake, and you might have needed a 50% fudge factor to
Yeah.
protect for it. These are just unknown. So all you can do is, I guess, take the reasonable approach that the courts would take if you get your
Mm-hmm.
butt sued for an inferior design. Uh,
Yeah.
Again, we don't have anybody doing structural building and things like this, or even building the foundation of a home where they could tell you how they deal with this. But I think they would take AI information and then superimpose on that the
Yeah. Yeah.
constraints of their professional things, and maybe their
Mhm.
liability insurance mandates that their designs have a X%
Mm.
fudge factor.
Yeah. Well, that's that's one of those things in engineering. You know, how much engineering margin is required for anything. I do know that civil engineering has a huge engineering margin, and John Hunt will testify that when you come to supersonic aircraft, the margins get a little on the narrow side.
John,
So,
any comments on that, John? Your your
Margins for, yeah.
on supersonic.
Well, yeah, they, yeah, I remember I was super. I remember I was in Harrier program. They were doing some mission, like mock altitude analyses, but they were using it for structural engineers to see how the various control surfaces could stand. And they always put a big fudge factor on whatever we came up with.
mhm. Yeah.
But we were trying to figure out, how much we'd be flying at this speed and that altitude or this other,
So
so forth.
here is
That
a
was my
good
early career days, the first couple of years.
Yes, yes,
here.
and we don't use fudge factor anymore. It's engineering margin.
Engineering
I got a
margin.
very
Okay.
tight lecture on that once.
So
Okay.
here is a good example of this. So probably most of you know that an F-35 was hit by an Iranian missile a couple of days ago. And so in this really interested me how it got hit in the first place, and then how the pilot was able to take the plane and land it. So most of everything about it is super, super classified. So apparently it was a proximity missile that
Hmm.
that
Proximity to,
that
yes.
deployed, and the F-35 was hit by proximity shrapnel,
Hmm.
and it
Mhm.
damaged the structure of the plane and other parts. But they said the plane, while it was designed to not have this happen, it didn't see the missile because of the properties of their stealth capacity and heat seeking. It didn't go into detail, but it said there were so many redundant systems and protections in the plane if it did get hit that it could still stay in the air and fly. So I'm assuming that when they designed this, their fudge factor to keep the plane in the air from something like this happening, because they know the weak point of a heat-seeking missile, because stealth doesn't protect you because the engine is so damn hot. And if you can't see the
Mhm.
missile coming in on you, you can't exercise maneuvers to deploy flares, which burn hotter than your engine is burning. And that's what they think happened to it. But their redundancy factor was so high that the plane was able to land at a regional F-35 ally airport, and the pilot was able to survive all of this. So whatever they used in their engineering design, and I'm sure AI was a really big part of F-35,
Mhm.
was sufficient for protecting the plane. Now we'll never know the truth about it because it's so classified, and they probably will make modifications because they have the plane to study to see what happened. But um, I'm sure they over-engineered that plane for all of these contingencies, way over and above what AI probably said they needed to do, and then the result is probably history. But I think
Mhm.
that's an example of how they try to over design over just what the numbers might tell them to do.
Mhm.
Hey, David, I don't think AI was around when the F-35 was designed.
But it's been modified. The
Mhm.
versions that are flying in Iran are modified versions of the F-35. So it has been modified with AI components. But I don't know what if AI wasn't around, the engineering that they used. I'm sure a lot of that engineering and again, Phil or somebody who does it, is all computer-driven engineering
Mhm.
and structural analysis and simulations of what happens if this happens and how does it behave if this happens.
Mhm.
So,
And safety factors and engineering margin.
and so
Yeah.
they exceeded that because the plane was not destroyed.
Mhm.
So I wish they would tell us exactly how that happened and what the tolerances and stuff were. I really would love to see that, but of course we'll never know any more than probably what's been released on it so far.
Yeah.
All of our adversaries would like that information too.
They won't even tell you what regional airport the F-35 landed at.
Probably in Saudi Arabia, wasn't it?
Well, they did the articles that I read said there was five F-35 uh, uh, bases in the Middle East. But
Mhm.
given where the plane was when they think it got hit, they think it was like one of three, but they won't say which one for security reasons. And I understand that, but I'm inquisitive and I like to know these things. So I've been reading up to try to see if they'll release more information on how it was done. But I think they're flying F-35Es or something like that that
Well,
have a lot of AI design in them, and they keep upgrading them, just like F-22 that John
Mhm.
worked on. That's probably a totally different plane than what you worked on, John.
well, I was never on a 30, but
Oh,
this
you
is a
were on the
field called
F-22.
yeah, but this is what's called survivability, vulnerability analyses. I think this became a big deal after Vietnam, particularly because we lost a lot of planes, and so we were trying to figure out, how to make them more redundant. They go through a complete calculation of all the systems and what would happen if something got hit with a piece of shrapnel or whatever, and try to create redundancy. I don't remember the structural stuff is pretty stabilized once you get into full scale production, unless you have a major modification. This
Mhm.
was probably designed in from the outset, would be my guess. And another thing I would say, also looking back to what happened to the F-117 over Serbia back in the day, this is probably a thing where maybe we don't know how many missiles they even fired at the thing.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
They
this
won't
getting one
say.
of them. It might be a little bit more like the old, they got one close enough, and I mean, maybe just optically. If the thing was, I'm saying, as opposed to really being a radar guided thing or to launch it
Or heat
an
guided.
infrared seeker, if it got too low, I mean, you could even talk one of these shoulder launch things. I don't know how high they were flying. I mean, they may have got overconfident that all the defenses have been suppressed, right? I mean, the big
Mhm.
ones, the long range radar guided ones had been, but probably with Tomahawks and harm missiles probably early on, right? Just and whatever the Israelis are
Mhm.
using, they have their own systems too.
Yeah,
But then,
I think the word is impact for
mhm,
the manned anti-aircraft, and
right,
I think they can go up to like 2,000 feet AGL and
yeah,
hit things reasonably well. So yeah,
yeah,
he could have been a little bit too low, and uh, he was taken out not by radar, but by a guy with an impact
yeah.
looking at him, and oh, I see a hot
Yeah.
tail, bang.
And the other thing I'd say is that the Iranians should have expected to get most of their high-end systems knocked out anyhow, considering the coalition they're fighting. So the smart thing would have been for them to hide some of it in a tunnel somewhere and not use it early on, and then break it out later on once we got confidence that we had suppressed everything. And then, I mean, look how the Russians lost some A-50, their AWACS equivalent airplane. I
Yeah,
mean, apparently got shot down with an old S-200, what we call SA-5, which the Ukrainians had wheeled out, and the Russians got in too close and got the thing, two of them knocked down. You know,
Since we're at 90 minutes, and
yeah,
um, if we look at AI going forward, it's not going away. It's
hmm
only going to become more entrenched in everything we do. The idea that it's going to take away our jobs, we'll have massive employment. People are scared about stuff like that, uh, all sorts of other problems. How do you see these risk factors being dealt with, or do you see them being dealt with? Does anyone have any thoughts on going forward in the future, and how do we protect jobs, or do we want to protect jobs? I personally think saying we can retrain people, I think that's
Mm,
largely BS. I don't know, what are you going to
mm,
retrain people for, and how many people are at an age and a place in their lives to be retrained. I'm not supportive of giving people basic income, but that is a suggestion that has been proposed that government will have to be able to figure out how to do. I'd love to hear if some of you have some creative ideas on how this fear factor and in the future for our society is going to be handled. Even Uber drivers, I ride Uber a lot, and they all say they won't be driving in 5 years. It'll all be totally self-driven AI cars. And now, even in Vegas, the AIs are being, you can order one on your Uber app because they're partnering with, I forget what the name of the company is, but in LA, you can order up a Waymo, and soon you'll have Tesla. And so they say their career as an Uber driver is maybe within 5 years. Um, how do any of you see any of this?
Um, I basically come in there with basic economic model and basically say, yeah, we have robots. Some of them are humanoid type and can do just about anything that a human can do. But there's a point where the cost of the robot gets to be so high that the manual labor, somebody taking care of things for themselves, is always going to be an economic factor. So as the cost of the robots, their capacities and so on rise, the price of the robots keep going up, and human labor may go down and eventually get to an equilibrium point where it's cheaper to pay a human to do the job because they're just naturally better at it. And let's face it, driving all night to deliver your Walmart goods is not really a good use for humans. Uh, you have a class of people that could be forced and trained into doing better, more interesting jobs, but they chose to drive trucks. Um, I see a lot of construction work, building houses and so on. A lot of it is, just moving stuff around. You move the lumber around, you cut the parts, you nail the parts together. Robots can do all that, but somebody has to manage it and make sure that it meets the requirements. And in some cases, look out for stupid things like broken limbs on the tree that's going to be in the backyard is eventually going to come down and crash on the house. Just straight up simple logic that a guy walking around would see, but a robot wouldn't. It doesn't mean anything because it's not in its programming. So there's going to be a balancing act. Yes, some people, maybe a lot of people, are not going to be up for the transition. Yeah, well, I'm not up for the transition. I'm old enough I don't have to. So I'm doing my
Yeah,
thing.
not going to
And,
affect us, obviously. Other
and
ideas from any of the others here in the room?
I still feel like there's no shortage of things that I'd like to see done, like whether it's organizing my garage better or painting something that needs to be painted around the house. Like I see like there's still lots of room to improve my life, and so if there's a little bit less time spent on the phone waiting for somebody to answer, so I can get my bank card to work again, something like that goes away, so I have another half hour free because of AI. I think that's a great thing. Like sure there may be a few less people answering phone calls about why my credit card got canceled or why there was a fraudulent transaction on it or something. But that would be something I'd like to see go away. That's a nuisance. And I'd rather have that be replaced with some guy who just shows up at my garage and does a little bit of organizing. That was the sort of thing that I see lots of room for improvement in our lives. And AI, it's improving things for sure. It's going to threaten some types of jobs, but as long as we readapt and say, like, there's lots of jobs out there, lots of things need to be done. We just got to help people adapt and not suffer in the process. I think it'll be great. So, yeah, I mostly think AI is going to be a good thing. I just think we have to help people make the transition, essentially.
Mhm.
Universal basic income, is that helping
No,
the transition?
no, I don't believe that's the solution to anything.
So, in addition to jobs that are going to be created by AI, I think the efficiencies and the improvements that AI are going to make is going to create jobs. It's not going to eliminate them. It's going to eliminate them in some parts of the economy, but data centers on the ground to support AI, that's going to create hundreds of jobs, thousands of jobs. So there's going to be different parts of the economy that are going to improve because of AI. So I think net it's going to be an improvement. It's not going to be a loss.
Other comments on that?
On the universal basic income thing, I think that's kind of the wrong way to approach the problem. I think the right way to approach it is to find a way to reward people for all kinds of value. Like right now, it's actually very difficult to get money to flow in your life, right? Like you might have to be very reliable. You might have to work 9 to 5. You have to do something that, is consistently valuable in order to get a job and hold the job and have income flow into your bank account. But there's lots of things that people do in the world, like maybe like a retired grandmother takes care of the kids once in a while. And there should be a way to say, yeah, she's adding value to the world. And she's supporting this young grandkid, and she should get rewarded for that. And she doesn't. She just, there's no money that flows out of the economy to her because she does those useful things. Or somebody who goes and helps somebody in a volunteering sense doesn't necessarily get rewarded. So I think we have to find ways to give people money for doing smaller things, or reward them for doing smaller things.
So before we end, I have a huge, huge gripe. And
Okay.
it's 100% trivial, but it pisses me off more than anything because I end up having to return phone calls or call companies or businesses, and I get caught in their unbelievably shitty, if I can use that word, AI attempts to create a voicemail responsive service or to use their favorite little chat buddy, Helene or Josephine or whatever, to solve all your customer service issues. And if you get caught in that crap, man, it is horrible. And most of the programs are horrible, and many of them have features that don't work. They'll say, you need to press this or that, and they'll hang up on you, and then you have to start it all over again. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that has faced AI and chat online and telephone voicemail or chat from hell, and you try to get a human to help you, and you start saying human, representative, customer service. Tell me your problem, please. It's like the old sitcoms where the operator would go, "What is your number, please?" It's just endless. So am I the only one that's encountering this? Just, it's horrible. Did anyone else comment on this? I told you it's trivial as hell, but when you get caught in it and you're trying to get help on a problem, it's really bad. Marshall?
First of all, I moved to Yukon so the wife could take care of granddaughter who lives 100 yards that way. And number two, my wife does all that because I can't stand it also. In fact, I am terribly, it's like, please let me program it directly. I'll fix it. And the other day we had a very interesting little problem. We wanted to change the electric bill for Renfro to come here instead of to Renfro. It still took 15 minutes going through the talkie system to get to a human, and she didn't understand the structure enough. She wanted to, quote unquote, change the name on the billing and do the old Social Security thing to take duplicate information and put it into another file and charge us $10 for a new account. And it still took another 15 minutes to say, we're just changing the mailing address. And that was it.
I don't know who programs this stuff. They think they have really great programmers. They don't. They're horrible.
They're terrible. Yes. They don't. They can take very cheap people and have them program it. Yes, you can take a high school dropout and they'll eventually get it reasonably close. No, that's probably exactly what they're doing. It's only reasonably close to working, right? And yeah, I think they're just taking high school students and giving them a job to program, the chats, and they come in there and do the speaking and figure out the script and submit it to the manager. And manager goes, "That's fine," and it's put in place. And the manager doesn't even know how to program. So,
And Phil, you look like you're laughing. Do you have a comment?
Well, I was thinking, well, it might help to find a clever way around some of these problems. So I know people like to go through the phone chain, but I had an example where I needed to move my bank to move some money from one account to another, and they wanted me to sign some documents indemnifying them from all possible mistakes. And I didn't want to sign these documents. So I used AI to write a letter in the term, like the way a lawyer would write a letter, explaining to them why they should move the money without requiring me to sign the indemnification documents. And I sent that to them, this AI written letter, and it worked like a charm. They were like, "Fine, we're going to move the money without making you sign the documents."
Yeah. Did you use the U.S. mail or did you send it back in chat?
I just emailed them a PDF.
The email. Yeah. So I have bypassed it and done that, but I usually will send it to the CEO, and it'll take me a week or so for the turnaround to happen. And in many ways, that's the only way I have found to go around the program. Some of them I can't get out of the program to talk to a human.
Yeah.
And if you try to tell it what your problem is, it doesn't understand what you're saying. And it says, okay, so you want to change your mailing address. Is that right? No, that's not why I'm calling. And then you go through the loop all over again. They all think they've got a cute little AI solution, and they all think they have to have an AI solution. And I guess it's because they don't want to pay employees, because they can just let the program run endlessly at no additional cost once they developed it. So I sort of get the economics of it. But boy, is it frustrating. And I don't see an end in sight. Apple is another great example of it. So they'll come out with an update, and then they'll put features in there to change how your iPhone is going to look or operate. And the features are worthless. Most people don't want them. Some of them are really, really bad, like their viewing screen called liquid glass, which for people with eye problems is a disaster. And then you update the system, and now you've got liquid glass and you can't take it off your phone. And they they got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of complaints, especially from people with vision problems. I was one of them. And so they give you a way to make some minor tweaks to it to minimize it. But I really think they've got young programmers in there, and how can we make the iPhone look cooler? And they just think of crazy shit to do, and then we'll build into to the next security update and we'll change it because everybody will really appreciate this and people don't want it. And then
Yeah.
I really think the system kind of works that way. And I think AI is opened the door for all of this because they're all sheltered from human contact. If you need to call and complain and give them a voice, all you can do is maybe give a statistical reply through chat or something. It's if you have Apple Care, you can actually talk to a human, but they read a script to you and they will say, "We're really sorry you're having a trouble, Mr. Livingston."
Yes.
Let me see if we can mitigate this by changing a few of the settings. But we can't get it off your program. And we know you have eye problem. It's a script that they're reading, that the human is reading. I guess it's better than the robot reading it. But all of this is, I find, really nerve-wracking and getting worse day by day in
Yeah.
American industry.
Mhm.
Any other comments about my number one gripe for all of this? Here's a
It would be
better
nice to see that improve.
doctor's offices call to confirm your appointments, and they're all sending text messages, but they don't use caller ID. So because of all the spam calls, almost everyone I know is blocking calls that don't use caller ID. So we don't get messages from doctors saying you have an appointment at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. And because they're using some stupid robot, if it goes to voicemail, the robot is not programmed to leave a voicemail message.
Yeah.
So you have an unidentified call number and no message. And so who knows what calls you're missing? Maybe spam, maybe not. And when I asked them to call using caller ID, the program's not set up to do that. But if a human calls me, it comes in with caller ID. But if they're using their robotic systems, they won't call with caller ID, and they're hearing from a lot of people that their calls are not being responded to because of this problem, and they don't program a change and put a name next to the number that is calling. So it's very frustrating, and I think the system really needs to change. And so far, I'm not seeing it change, but it's really a frustrating system, and everyone has to have an AI system. I mean, I think that's your blue label that you've arrived as a company that you're using AI to handle customer service. And I personally think it sucks, but
Yeah.
We really need to figure out some way to be able to vote for what we really want. Like what changes do we really want in our lives? Like I want less junk mail, for example, right? I don't want my operating system to change all the time. I want it to be stable. Like there's things that we want and we're not getting, and there's things that we don't want that we are getting. So how do we fix it so that we're getting what we want and not getting what we don't want?
Your guess is as good as mine, but
Well, I like the statement of if you want more of it, subsidize it. If you want less of it, tax it. So if we could figure out some system of getting these uh, robo systems that do the junk calls and the junk mail and so on like that, if we could just figure out how to tax them, it would wipe out the economic base. And if you could wipe out their economic base, they'd quit it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, AI hasn't come up with how do you track and tax robo systems on the internet.
or how do you manage customer service so that you don't piss off all the people calling for service? Because it's really, if you get trapped into one of those systems or a chat program or something where you can't get what you need and you're spending lots of your time trying to get help and you can't reach a human, and maybe they don't even publish a phone number for you anymore, because I noticed many of them have given up their 800 customer service numbers because they say chat with us. But God, if you chat with them, you're with their great chat agent, Elizabeth, and who the hell knows what it's going to do or take you to. Anyway, we're close to a 2-hour program. Do we have any other comments or anybody want to add anything to this discussion?
I think it's time.
Sherry, you want to add anything? I'll just go down the list. Sherry, anything from you?
Well, I was going to say something about how I use AI. I'll try to make it really short. I don't pay for it. I just use free, and I use it to to improve my email, and it can tell you.
It can tell you what? We lost you. You're muted again. Yeah.
Like Phil said, that sometimes it makes a mistake. So, but I found it really useful in an odd kind of a way. When I first started using it, I was just awestricken by how wonderful it was, right?
Uh-huh.
It would take me hours to compose something. And so over time now, and then the AI would actually do better than I did. And I'd be like, really? I marvel at it. However, it's, so I became less and less. I type in less and less, and it does more and more. And like I say, this is only for email purposes. This is the free version on Yahoo Mail. So I'll have a long train of, or what do you call it, of correspondence with somebody. And I can now write in maybe between 1 and 3 sentences, and the AI will come, and I'll say improve. I always choose improve. Not always, but mostly. And it'll come up with 3 or 4 exceptionally well written paragraphs. Not only that, it will have gone in a few seconds. It will have gone through, let's say, 50 emails back and forth. So maybe even a total of 100. And it'll pull up something that, they said or I said a year ago and bring it to the fore as in, blah, 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 and apply it. And I'm really pleased with it. I'm really amazed by it. The other day, I was writing to somebody and the similar sort of thing happened. And the AI inserted, and I always proofread, I always very carefully proofread. And it came up with something that actually wasn't applicable. It was like, it was I don't remember exactly what, but it wasn't applicable at all to this specific scenario. So while I use it and I love it, I am careful to proofread what it says. And basically, oh, I know another thing. I watch television like a researcher, so I'll put it on pause and I'll go to my phone and I'll look to AI. I'll ask my phone. I'll ask, okay, what blah 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 blah. What year did the Moors invade Spain? Right? And then I will get lost and read for like 30 minutes about that sort of thing. But I use AI a lot every day, a lot more than I thought I did before this conversation started today, but I use it many, many times a day for looking things up. So that's all I had to say. This was what the program was about. How do you use AI? I thought I used it in email, but I realized I actually use it in research more than I do in the email. But it's really good at everything. But like everybody has pointed out, or most people have pointed out, it can make mistakes. So you do have to know your stuff. Or at least find another source. Go look at that,
Jossy, you have any closing comments?
No, great show. Thanks for bringing it up.
John Hunt, any closing comments?
No.
Marshall, you've been closing all day, but anything additional?
I would like to say that I first came across AI as a concept way back in graduate school, a million years ago. And one of the key things that they came up with is AI sits between real intelligence, which is analog brains, and mathematical algorithms. And most of what I see in the AI world is a mathematical algorithm. I don't see much artificial intelligence in there, though there is some people that are out there doing artificial work trying to figure out how the brain does things. And that's where I see artificial intelligence. most of what I see in the public is basically algorithms, mathematics. Unfortunately, I'm a mathematician, so I tend to have a slant.
So you're
So,
just seeing machine learning across the board,
yeah,
advanced machine learning.
yeah.
Phil, you've been voicing a lot, but do you have any concluding comments?
Yeah, just that I think it is important to think about like look at the overall perspective of your life and say, what are the things that are still broken? What are the things that are still working, you know, in the world as I interact with it? And is AI improving, or is it making it worse on any individual thing, or does it have no effect? And I think there's a lot of things in our lives that we're just saying it's still bad. It hasn't gotten any better. And there's some things where AI has actually made it a lot better. And overall, I think AI has been a good thing for how it's helping our lives out. I haven't seen any negative consequences of AI yet, so hopefully, fingers crossed that won't happen. But um, just I feel everybody should be objective in treating AI as a new tool in their lives, and maybe it'll make things better over time.
One of these days we'll do a self-driving car show to see who's done it and who uses it and what you think of it. And I think maybe soon, maybe not this year, but next year, we can start talking to people who have done flying cars. I think I don't know if any will really and truly enter the commercial market this year, but I do read that there are several that are electric, very short range, that might enter that. As a pilot, and Marshall can attest to this,
Mhm.
I don't know how someone can fly a self-driving car who is not a pilot, but maybe the algorithms just take over and you pray to God you don't need a pilot for an emergency. I don't know. But
It's that emergency parachute that, pull.
I mean, if you had to set the car down someplace, you still have to know how to do that. And
Yes.
I especially if the reason you have to set it down is the self-driving functions have gone kaput and your car is coming down whether you like it or not. And does the car even have wings and lift? I don't. A lot of questions, but I'd love to do a show about that when they are operational, not when they're theoretical.
Well,
So
I want to ask a question quick. Has anybody used a self-driving car?
yeah,
Like
I've used
taxi? I thought you said you had. Okay. In LA or here in Vegas?
Los Angeles.
Uh-huh. And what was it like?
So it's very weird because most of the Waymos don't have a safety driver, but some of them do. And it says, "Hello, Dr. Livingston. Thank you for using Waymo. We are taking you to 123 ABC Street, da 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 da. We hope you enjoy your ride." So here's a couple of things about it. It obeys 100% of the traffic laws. So I have also been with Uber drivers in LA that run red lights, that speed up and go through a stop sign, that cut people off, that shoot people on the freeway, the finger, that do everything that all of the rest of us do. And they listen to all sorts of things on their radio shows, from ethnic music that drives me crazy to the news to whatever, or if you choose dialogue on Uber, they will talk with you. If you tell them you want a silent ride, they're not supposed to talk to you, but they may use their cell phone to talk to somebody else. Waymo, that does not happen. This is 100% focused ride, and they do not go over the speed limit, but you are relying on all of their sensors to see the ball run into the road, to see the dog, to see the old guy with a cane jumping off the curb when he shouldn't be, to see the idiot cutting corners and trying to cut gaps on the freeway, all of the things that we see. And I was really surprised that it does it really well. So the statistics are that the safety of a self-driving car is substantially better than a car driven by humans. And I hear the guys on All In talking about that all the time with the self-driving car people. And that's why they think that eventually in 5 years, it'll be almost all self-driving, even for residential, even for individual users because of the safety factor. But again, they obey the speed laws and the traffic laws. So if you are in a hurry and you say to the Uber driver, get me to the goddamn airport in a hurry. I'll do this if you make it, or the taxi driver. You can't do that. It's going to get you to the airport according to the traffic laws and the speed limits. So if you find that frustrating and you want to, dart in and out of traffic and speed and cut corners and do this and this to get to point B quicker, then you probably won't enjoy self-driving cars. But I do find them safe, and I found them reliable. They did get me to where I needed to go. They're cheaper than Uber. You don't tip the Waymo driver or Waymo computer, and but they don't go everywhere. So I mean, there's a lot of places where they can't go, and they can't navigate certain kinds of driveways and certain types of hotel and other drop-offs. They're not allowed to go to LAX because they can't navigate how cars enter and drive through LAX and drop off for baggage or pick up. So if you're going to use self-driving, they go to drop-off points at the fringe of the airport, and then you have to figure out how you're going to get from there to where you need to go. So, but I would tell people to try it and see if you like it. It's a very weird experience. So, and I think it'll be easier because Uber is partnering with many of these self-driving car companies. So you can choose on your Uber app and possibly Lyft too. I don't have Lyft. That you want a self-driving car to pick you up. So have at it. I think it's coming, and we're not going to be able to avoid it.
Mhm.
So, but I'd do a show about it if I thought there would be enough interest in it, even though
What's
it's not
the
space related.
what's the voice, David? Is it male, female?
For me, it was just a straight U.S. accent voice. I don't know if you can tell the driver whether to pick you up in a woman's British voice, UK England, or a French voice. You could probably tell it to speak a foreign language.
Yeah.
If you spoke French better than your English and you're a tourist, you could probably maybe make that kind of a choice. But half the Uber drivers I have in LA, honest to God, with my hearing aids, I still can't understand what they're talking about because hearing aids aren't great for a lot of accents. So yeah, that is a problem. And with a self-driving car, you probably wouldn't have that problem. So go try them. One of these days we'll do a show about it, and you can report your self-driving experiences and see if they're positive or negative. Marshall, you'll probably have to wait a long time for that to come to UConn. So everybody, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. So next Sunday is Joel Sercel from TransAstra. Zimmerman is on Tuesday. How would you like Zimmerman's voice to be programmed into your self-driving car, your Uber car, and you're being picked up by Zimmerman? Would you guys like that? Wouldn't that be a treat? You could tell it whose voice you want to imitate, and you pick Bob Zimmerman. I think that would be a hoot. But and Bob could sell his voice and license it, so Waymo could make it an option. So just a thought for a new business: license your voice so people can pick who they want to pick them up in their self-driving car. How about that for a entrepreneurial business model?
I like that idea. It's kind of neat. I went through all the Alexa male voices, and I just went back to the default Alexa voice because I wasn't happy with any of them.
Well, Anyway, we
No
got
Morgan Freeman, you know,
yeah.
no
So,
Denzel.
so Zimmerman is Tuesday. Friday is to be determined. We'll see if any of these people selected or want a later date. And then Sunday is Joel of Transastra. And Hotel Mars this week is the show that got canceled because Bachelor forgot about it last week on this student at Yale who found out that the DART mission, which we talked about extensively a couple of years ago, actually changed the orbit of the asteroid and what it's doing as a result of it having changed its orbit. And so that is the Hotel Mars program, which of course we can't listen to live. So we wait for John to archive it and then I will archive it. Everybody have a great rest of the weekend and thank you for listening and come back Tuesday night. Bob Zimmerman. Goodbye from Marshall, John, Phil, and Sherry, and those of who left us early. If you're driving, uh, be patient if you get stuck behind a Waymo because you're going to get frustrated. Goodbye, everybody.